Alright, hey guys, Carson here with Tools with Tools. On this episode, in one of these storage units, there's a 1967 Mustang that I bought from a friend of mine from college. Problem is I can't remember what the storage unit number is. We came up here a couple months ago and looked at the car, so we know it's one of these. I've got the key, and it goes to one of these locks, so we're just going to start trying, and hopefully nobody comes and asks too many questions. It's a lucky number 58. Oh, it is! See? There she is. Piece of shit.
Well, yeah, but you know, the car's nice. You're a piece of shit.
Yep, so here's what we're gonna do with this car. As in one, I guess if you've seen the first episode of Tools with Tools, we pulled that 460 out of that Ford Super Duty. I was gonna put that in my 1970, but I decided it's a little bit too clean, and the friend reached out and said, hey, I got this 67. I mean, you'll see later in this episode, it's got some issues. I don't feel as bad tearing this car down and throwing a big, huge 460 big block in here. So our plan for today is we'd like to drive it home. This car hasn't ran in about, what did we decide, 10 years, something like that. We're gonna put air in the tires and see if they hold, and then after that, we're just gonna try and get it to run, and hopefully we'll drive it out of here today. Our air compressor is overpowering our generator, so hopefully we have enough air left in the tank to get the last tire filled up. I think we'll be okay, at least enough to get us to some other air pump.
So this car's got a 289 V8 in it, so we'll take a look at that. We'll pop open the ranch here. If you're wondering why we call it the ranch, because that's where the horses live. So it's definitely got some potential here. You can see we've got some aftermarket parts on this motor. What we're hoping is that we aren't going to find anything really wrong with the motor. We've got some PD blaster and such to get down into the cylinders, so if it's got a little bit of a rust ridge in any of the cylinders, we should be good to go with that. So we're going to try and see if the motor will roll over by hand first, then check the fluids, oil and such, and see how that's doing. And if that's all good, we're going to slap a battery in her, see if she wants to come back to life. So let's see what's going on in the old oil pan here. So it looks like it might have had a change because there's evidence of some older oil, that's the darker stuff there, and some newer caramel colored stuff there. Let's give a little taste test. Tastes like oil.
It looks like it has a little bit of water in it, though.
I mean, maybe.
We need to put a bunch of oil in it, though. You can tell it barely has any of it.
Yeah, because there's your add and full marks way up here, and the oil level's way down there, left of the A. So
basically, we're just going to give it an oil change.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
I'm going to use 10W30. Why, you ask? Because that's what I had in my closet thing at home. I'm going to get it. Oh, yeah. All over the headers. Or I shouldn't even say headers. Manifold. Man, I suck at this.
This is why we don't have our own TV show.
Well, you know what? This is also a storage unit that I'm not paying for, so it ends up all over the ground.
Well, no. See, what this is going to generate is once we
it's going to give us the smoke screen.
Yeah.
James Bond smoke screen.
Yeah, this engine's going to have like the white flag of defeat.
So, look, it actually made it look nicer.
Yeah, if you really want to de-dust stuff, what you're going to want to do is just pour some 10W30 on it first. That's really what the professionals do.
Wow. So on this engine, we've got an Edelbrock 1405. If you're ever wondering what kind of carburetor you have on there, the Edelbrocks at least stamp them down here. 1405 is a 600 cubic foot per minute carburetor, which should be more than enough for this 289. It's a manual choke. Sometimes these carburetors come with electric chokes, so the 1970 Mustang I have has this exact same carburetor on that, but it's an electric choke. So this has a cable that runs into the car. Some of these don't have chokes, and they're usually used more in like racing applications where you're not going to be driving this around day in and day out.
We're just taking off the fan so that we can get at the crankshaft bolt. There's a single bolt in the center of it, and that's what we're going to use to turn this motor over, but the fan's in the way, so we're going to pop that off. Different motors have different ways to turn them over. Even some of the motors, you can just turn them over using the alternator bolt, but this one's got a fancy pants racing silver one, so we can't even try that. So
billet aluminum is what you're looking for. The term.
It's fancy pants. Well, because I don't have any.
Well, while DJ's working on that, I'm going to start pulling spark plugs out of this thing and just spraying a little bit of PB Blaster down into the cylinders. We don't think this car has ran in anywhere from 7 to 10 years, so that'll just kind of help the rings have a little bit of lubrication when they come up and down the cylinder, and then when we turn over the engine too, we're hoping to get a little bit of oil up into the internals of the engine. What a lot of people will do on these engines is, so on the distributor here, all the way down on the bottom, there's a gear, and at the bottom of that gear, there's like a little, you can think of it as like a flathead screwdriver that sticks into the oil pump. And so people will take old distributors and pull them apart and kind of like hook a drill to them, and you can stick them all the way down in there and manually turn that oil pump with a drill. They'll hook drills up to it and just spin it real quick, and that'll get oil all the way up to the lifters and stuff. But we don't have that today, and we're just gonna turn it over by hand a few times, and hopefully that's good enough. We're going to the parts store because we ran out of PB Blaster. But before we do so, we want to check all the fluids in here and make sure that we got enough of everything. I did bring some brake fluid, but and it is totally empty. So,
So this may be a little bit problematic, the fact that this is completely empty, because now we may have air in the line. So later on, we may be teaching you guys how to bleed brakes.
we closed up the storage unit and ran over to the parts store to pick up some parts and some fluids. When we got back, we pushed the Mustang out of the storage unit to be in the sunlight for the first time in who knows how long. This thing hasn't been outside in 10 years probably. Who knows? When did they say you bought this car? 13? I guess it's 20, so 7. Hasn't been outside in 7 years. I almost said 8 because I'm dumb. Math. So I got all the plugs pulled from my side. All the cylinders have a little bit of PB Blaster in it. DJ's just finishing this up. We also put a new fuel filter in it because the old one was completely garbage. It was pretty gross. So once he gets that done, then we'll turn the motor over a few times, throw a battery in it, and try and see if we can get it to crank to life.
So right now Carson's just rolling the motor over by hand. We're doing this to check a lot of different things. One, sometimes these motors, when they sit for a while, you'll get a ridge of rust that'll form in the cylinders, right where that cylinder was sitting, and that can make it a little difficult to turn it over, but that's why we threw a little penetrant in there. But that seems to be working good, and based on how it turns over, you can tell a lot about how things like the main bearings, the crankshaft, the pistons, all of those are doing by how smoothly it rolls over.
We're also trying to get a little bit of oil if we can. So every time we turn this engine over, theoretically, the oil pump's turning too, and it's shoving a little bit of oil through the blocks, so it kind of helps prime it.
Yeah, because when the motor sits, all of the oil that's up at the top end starts to drain downwards, and eventually it all ends up in the pan. And so when we start it, the oil pump's going to have to bring it back up to the top of the motor. That period when it's pumping it up to the top means that the lifters and a lot of the components will not have lubrication for just a little while. That's why cold starts are one of the hardest things you can do to your car. So anything you can do to try and enhance that will definitely make your life a little bit easier. Do we have a pre-luber for this motor?
No.
Well, that's okay. We're getting ready to fire it up. One of the first things to go in a modern car is gasoline, because ethanol is horrible for timeliness of gasoline. So we're going to see if that works. So he's going to turn the motor on, and hopefully we're going to hear this little clickety-clack electric fuel pump down here come to life and start squirting nice, happy gasoline through there. But it's probably going to be like oak varnish. So
yeah, it's going to look like it came right out of a can of steam.
So let's see what happens. Okay, the clickety-clack's going. It's trying anyways.
Well, let's at least crank it and maybe dump a little bit of gas down the carburetor and see if it'll fire.
Yeah, so by doing that, we can just put some gas right in here and just bypass the whole fuel system.
Anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and dump a shitload of fuel down in there, okay?
Right down our throat hole.
Right down the throat. Probably can.
We're not looking for much fuel. We don't really want to like run it for hours on that. Mostly we just want to hear it fire, because if that works, then we know a lot of the separate components are working together.
First time I've actually ever sat in my car.
Yep. Okay, that was very good news. So
Mustang.
yeah, so that little fire, that's actually very, very good news, because a lot of components have to go together to make that happen. So we know the spark plugs are firing, we know the valve timing isn't completely screwed, we know that the bottom end is holding together. All we have to do now is just feed it some continuous fuel, and this thing might be good to go.
Dude, another cool thing about this car, the 1967 versus the 70 that I have, check it out.
Wind wings.
Wind wings. It's a shame that new modern cars don't have wind wings because they're so
Yeah, I bought a 95 Ford truck. I didn't notice for a while that the air conditioning didn't work because I had those. I just never needed air conditioning. Carson's had this car for, what, 20 minutes, and he's already lost the keys.
Wait, they're in my pocket.
They're in his pocket.
After messing around for a few minutes with the fuel pump, we determined that it was broken out of the box from the parts store. How frustrating is that? I told the guy at the parts store I'd be back in about 25 minutes. Pretty accurate, I'm only about 20 minutes off. It's been 45 minutes since we were at the parts store last, so I'm sure this won't be the last time that we're here today either. All right, we've got our new fuel pump in, so he's gonna go turn it on and we're gonna see if we get some fuel flow here. Just on position. And we have fuel. Just keep letting it run for a second. Let it fill up the float bowl. Oh shit. We might have a little bit of a fuel leak. So you could see in that fuel line, there's a crack right there. That's where it was squirting out. So to replace it, we just popped it off. We cut that much off of it. Got down to good line. There's still some cracks in here. So we're hoping that it's gonna at least get us home. This isn't too bad. This is a lot worse than it is throughout here. So DJ's just gonna put that on the rest of the way, and then we're gonna be golden. We're gonna be driving out of here 10-20 minutes. There's more leaks in the line, so we're just gonna go to the parts store for the third time today and get some more fuel hose. Be back in a little bit, bitch.
So basically what we're doing is we need to bleed the brakes to remove air from inside the system. The reason air is so dangerous in a brake system is the brake fluid is a liquid, and as such it is not very compressible. Air, on the other hand, is incredibly compressible. So when you put your foot down on the brake, if you're compressing that fluid, it's not really going to compress. It's just going to transmit all that force to the brakes on the car. But the air is just going to compress and absorb that energy, and your brakes aren't going to do anything. So what we're doing is basically just forcing fluid through the system to push all the air out at each individual tire, and then that way we know we have a stream of solid fluid as we do that. Now, in this car, because there is a crap load of air in the system, we want to check this every time, because if we run that fluid all the way out, it's just going to suck air back into the system, and then we have to do the whole thing over again. So you never want to let that get all the way down.
So we're down here on the front end. We've got this, is called a bleeder screw. So what we're gonna do is DJ's gonna pump the brakes 3 times, and on the third one he's gonna push it all the way to the floor. I'm gonna open up this bleeder, and to know that you have your brakes successfully bled is out of this bleeder it will be a solid stream of fluid and no air. So go ahead, DJ, pump the brakes 3 times.
1, 2, 3.
So now I'm gonna open up this bleeder screw, and you can see it's a little bit of air coming out there, so I'm gonna close it. DJ, another time.
1, 2, 3.
He's holding, so I'm gonna open up the bleeder. See him a little bit more air come out. Pretty solid. One more time, DJ.
1, 2, 3.
And we're gonna open it up. Pretty solid stream. Oh, there's a good bubble of air. So we know there's still quite a bit of air in the line, so we're gonna top off the reservoir and just keep doing this. All air. Okay. Oh, the guy that we bought it from mentioned that the brake pedal wasn't hooked up to the actuator for the master cylinder, so we're just down here putting that in there. It's missing a cotter pin, so we'll probably just try to find some wire to shove in there, and then we're gonna try and wire up the brake switch, so maybe we'll have tail lights, and hopefully I don't get pulled over on the way home because I don't have insurance or registration. Baling wire is one of my favorite things. It can be used for so many applications, and in this application it's going to be used as a cotter pin to hold my my brake pedal on the master cylinder. Well, DJ's going to get us some more fuel line. We have bled all 4 corners. I would like to bleed them a little bit more though, because the pedal still seems a little bit squishy. While he's gone, I'm going to pull everything out of the trunk, because as you can see, it is loaded down. DJ, I should say, just got back from the parts store. We're just installing this fuel line. So we'll hook it up, we'll zip tie some stuff together to just kind of make everything nice and tidy, and hopefully we can get it to idle, and we can do a little bit of tuning on that.
So, we've got the fuel pump situation figured out. Just got it reset, and everything's going good there. And it's running. You can see it's actually idling pretty smoothly, and it's actually got a pretty good pump job. So she likes it. So, motor's obviously in good shape. Still a little bit of barbecue action going on over there, but nothing too crazy. So, It's pretty cool. First time in 8 years this motor's run, as far as we can tell.
This is one of my favorite things about these old Mustangs is the gas cap. It's back here in the back. It's pretty cool. So what we're gonna do, if I can get this thing out of the way, is I'm gonna go ahead and put some clean gas in it, and we're hoping we can pick it up from the tank. What I think I'm gonna do here is pressurize the tank here, and then what it should do is push fuel all the way through the fuel line to the front of the motor, and then when we see it come out, we get the fuel pump back up, and then we know it's not going to take a long, long time to try and suck gas all the way from the tank to the front. So I think that's what we're going to try and do here in just a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this rag, and really try to close off this inlet here, and then shove pressurized air into the tank, and hopefully it pushes it all the way through to the front of the car. You want to go look and see if it's coming out?
Yep, it's coming out. Looks a little green, but you know.
It'll work. We are picking up fuel out of the tank. So I think all we're gonna do here is just kind of button up some wires here with some zip ties. We're gonna put the hood on it because if I'm gonna drive it home, I don't want to be such a caught magnet. We do need to make sure that it goes through the gears and stuff right. I'm gonna let it warm up just a little bit, check the trans fluid, check the engine oil and the fluids one more time, and do a lap around the parking lot and check the brakes, and hopefully we can get out of here. All right, here's our first test drive. Brakes feel like oh, it goes into drive, and that's to the floor. The brakes barely work, but that's all right. Let's go see if that's a can of PB blasters that just fell off the roof.
That sounded like metal on metal.
We're gonna go ahead and check the transmission fluid and see what it looks like, because it doesn't like to shift. Oh, there it went in here. Yeah, it needs trans fluid bad. Yeah, gonna put some of that sweet, sweet transmission fluid in there. Yeah. Drink up, you thirsty Lord. So I'm pretty stoked right now. I'd say we're winning pretty good with this 67 Mustang. Just put 2 quarts of trans fluid in there, and I know this is super weak sauce, but I did a 1-wheel peel. Yeah, bitches. 1-wheel peel in a car that probably hasn't moved in 8 years. I think I'll call that a win. I also didn't have any brakes. So hopefully we can get those brakes put back together, and I honestly think this thing might actually do a burnout. So we'll see what happens. I found a Christmas ornament with Mormon Jesus in it. It's gonna go on the rear view. Jesus, take the wheel. That's copyrighted.
So on this episode of Tools with Tools, we took this Mustang that sat for 8 years in a storage unit, got it running, got it driving. Unfortunately, we have been a little bit struck down by the fact the thing is pigeon-toed on the alignment, so we can't drive it home, but we're going to trailer this thing home, and you are going to see it soon on another episode of Tools with Tools. Jackass.
So as DJ was mentioning before, we're kind of bummed about this, man. We almost were able to drive this thing home tonight, but we started driving it around and we were getting tires squealing and stuff. So here's the issue. If you look at how centered up that tire is, right? So the wheel is completely straight according to the driver's side tire. And then you come over here and you see this. Look at how toe in that is. So the thing is seriously out of alignment. All the alignment shops are closing here in the next half hour. We're a little bummed, a little defeated, but we came up here and in one day pulled a car out of a storage unit that hasn't ran for something like 7 or 8 years, got it to run, got it to drive. We did burnouts, we ate pizza, cold pizza. I'd call today a win. Overall, we were pretty happy with how our day went. We took a car that hadn't run in 7 years and brought it back to life and had a lot of fun doing it. And in the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Ultimately, we hope that you see this and realize that if someone as stupid as we are can pull something like this off, you can too. As far as the Mustang goes, I can guarantee that you will see her on another episode of Tools with Tools. You know, this is a quality automobile because the dome light works. My Jesus ornament fell down. If it gets to Park City in one piece, it's a good omen. Or bad, I don't know.